Every year, seemingly thousands of shows wind up on Netflix from all across the globe, and sometimes, like in the case of, say, the German sci-fi thriller Dark, some of those shows wind up huge successes and start social media ablaze. TikTok, in particular, has had a generous helping hand in catapulting Squid Game's popularity, thanks to a trend wherein TikTokers try to play some of the death games themselves. But what's the root of this tomfoolery, huh? Creator Hwang Dong-hyuk was inspired to write Squid Game by a few factors. First was, of course, the issues of debt and money lending in South Korea, a problem that plagues most of the world and which he figured correctly lots of people would relate to. He has theorized that the show is so successful because of the game's simplicity and the irony of adults playing children's games to the death. Then, of course, there's the title, which not too shockingly came from the real-life children's game that Hwang played in his youth. He figured it was more symbolic of the society we live in today. With a great simple idea for mass audiences pretty much in the bag, when it was finally time to make the dang show, Hwang got to build his cast. And oh boy, what a cast. We're into spoiler territory, by the way, so maybe ditch now if you're thus far unsullied.
This is the frontman speaking.
For the role of the frontman, Hwang turned to the actor perhaps most well-known to US audiences, Lee Byung-hun, who of course played Snake Eyes in G.I. Joe Retaliation. This is probably the point where I should mention I'm really bad at saying Korean names, so if you speak Korean and you actually know how to pronounce these, I'm sorry about your ear holes. Byung-hun also led the South Korean Ji-woo Kim revenge film I Saw the Devil, which, if you like extreme tension and bittersweet plot points, that's the film for you. He had also already worked with Hwang on the historical action film The Fortress in 2017, so presumably they were already pretty tight. Anyway, if you were wondering why your film snob friend was freaking out during the frontman's face reveal, this is why. For the lead role of Seong Gi-hun, the production turned to Jung-jae Lee, another top-tier actor who broke into the business in the 90s and saw his skills heavily rewarded following the hit City of the Rising Sun in 1999. He also works as a fashion model, which might explain that hair at the end. If your exposure to Korean cinema is limited, your best chance of having seen him was 2010's The Housemaid. By the way, you want a real Squid Game secret? This bod. That's Lee in the 2005 film Typhoon, and oh boy. Among the rest of the cast, there are plenty of other storied careers, but the one that probably stood out to you the most after all Snake Eyes back there is this guy, Gong Yoo, who of course has the distinction of slapping around this beefcake for a paycheck. He's also the star of another breakout Korean property, Train to Busan. Also, an excessively depressing story. Koreans, man. Quality cinema and quality heartache. By the way, all these sets, yeah, about as practical as possible. The arena for Red Light Green Light was a real outdoor set, albeit with blue screen walls, and even that creepy giant doll was a real creation, presumably possessed by some sort of Conjuring-style demon. The doll's design was based on the illustrations from old Korean textbooks. Some locations, like the tug-of-war and glass bridge sets, were more heavily supplemented with CGI, but the iconic Escher-esque staircases, Marbles-town, and playground were all very real places built for the production. Oh, and something I noticed in the behind-the-scenes videos, look at those blood squibs. Practical. Oh, and the honeycomb? Real honeycomb. Apparently the whole set smelled like it all day, and I'm assuming they were delicious. Look at that real tempered glass they're hopping around on. Look, the point is, this ain't Revenge of the Sith. Anytime the production could go practical, they did, and it's a major factor for the show's success. Whoa, hang on guys. Now let's talk about the plagiarism allegations, which suggest that Squid Game ripped off the Takashi Miike film As the Gods Will. Considering that film came out in 2014 and Hwang had started work on Squid Game around 2008, that seems like a bit of a coincidence. The alleged infraction is due to As the Gods Will, also featuring deadly childhood games, including Red Light Green Light, which, while I am a big Miike fan, yeah, that does seem like a bit of a stretch. Now, if Kenji Fukasaku wants to rise from the grave to remount Hwang for stealing the sleeping gas reveal and island location from Battle Royale, let's bring it on. Let's do this Battles Without Honor and Humanity style, guys. Come on. Ooh, you know what? That's actually a really good idea. Battles Without Honor and Humanity, but zombies. Oh! Now, you may have noticed some pretty ratchet subtitles here and there if you chose to watch Squid Game in its original Korean language. But if you speak Korean and read the subtitles, you might have noticed a lot of little issues with the translation.
Everything she says is not really aligning, and so you're missing a lot of this character and what she stands for.
One TikToker, for example, points out that in the Ganbu scene, the meaning behind the characters' bonding moment is basically lost. The subs say that as Ganbu, they share everything, but the actual dialogue says there is no ownership between them.
Not, we share everything. That is a huge miss.
Apparently, heaps and heaps of the dialogue is like this, often erasing issues of class inherent in little phrases and word choices, so if you're fluent in Korean and also agitated by the differences, be sure to sound off in the comments. I'd love to know what I missed. Finally, if you are curious about a second season, after that sort of cliffhanger finale, you may be out of luck. While Hwang hasn't said no to the possibility, he also has no plans for a season 2. If he does wind up doing it, he said he'd like to hire a writer's room and multiple directors. Presumably because killing hundreds of men and women via children's games is exhausting. And that's hopefully just the tip of the iceberg for Squid Game, although even if we do get a second season, those of us who remember the downfall of Lost or the painful demise of Game of Thrones know that sometimes you probably should just be left wanting more. But also I gotta have more Jung-jae Lee! Look at those abs!